The microphone crackled to life as Emmanuel Thompson rose from his seat at the head table, his eyes locked on his son Xavier, standing beside his soon-to-be husband in front of 200 guests. In that moment, everyone in the sunlit Chicago ballroom knew the speech was about to expose everything Xavier had fought so hard to keep hidden, but no one was prepared for how it would shatter and then rebuild their world. Xavier's heart pounded like a drum in his chest. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the air-conditioned chill. He had spent years building walls around his truth, and now his own father was about to tear them down in front of everyone who mattered. The ring on his finger felt suddenly heavy, a symbol of the life he had finally claimed after so much pain. Emmanuel cleared his throat, the sound echoing through the room like a gunshot. Guests shifted in their seats, whispers rippling through the crowd. Xavier's partner, Alex, squeezed his hand tighter, offering silent strength, but nothing could prepare him for what came next. It had all started 15 years earlier in the quiet suburbs outside Chicago. Xavier was 13 when he first understood the difference he felt inside. While his classmates talked about girls and first kisses, he found himself drawn to the boy who sat 2 rows ahead in math class. The feeling terrified him. His father, Emmanuel, was the kind of man who coached Little League, hosted backyard barbecues, and preached about hard work and traditional family values at every dinner table. A real man provides for his wife and kids, Emmanuel would say, slapping Xavier on the back after a baseball game. Xavier smiled and nodded, but inside he felt the growing crack between who he was and who his father wanted him to be. High school only made it worse. Xavier dated girls to keep up appearances, even took one to prom, but every stolen glance at the locker room or late-night conversation with his best friend Marcus felt like a betrayal of the lie he was living. Marcus was the only one who seemed to sense something. "You okay, man? You look like you're carrying the weight of the world," he would say during their late-night video game sessions. Xavier always brushed it off, laughing too loudly, changing the subject to college plans. But the pressure built. By senior year, the secrecy had become a constant ache, a shadow that followed him everywhere. College in downtown Chicago brought the first real freedom and the first real terror. Away from home, Xavier met people like him. He joined a campus LGBTQ group almost by accident, telling himself it was just curiosity. That was where he met Daniel, the confident art major with kind eyes and an easy laugh. Their first date was simple, coffee in a small cafe near campus, but it changed everything. For the first time, Xavier felt seen. They walked along the lakefront, talking about dreams and fears, and when Daniel kissed him under the streetlights, Xavier didn't pull away. The joy was overwhelming, but so was the guilt. Every weekend trip home became a performance. He smiled at his mother's questions about girls, nodded when his father talked about settling down with a good woman someday. The secret lasted 2 years until one summer night, when everything cracked open. Xavier had come home for a family barbecue. Marcus, now his roommate during breaks, had tagged along. After a few beers, Marcus pulled him aside in the garage. "Dude, I know. I've known for a while. It's okay." The words hit Xavier like a wave. Relief flooded him, but fear followed fast. He swore Marcus to secrecy, but the weight of carrying it alone was crushing him. That night, after everyone left, Xavier sat on the edge of his childhood bed and cried for the first time in years. He knew he couldn't keep living the double life. The decision to come out came the next Christmas. The tree lights twinkled, presents waited under the branches, and the smell of his mother's roast filled the house. Xavier waited until dessert, his hands shaking as he set down his fork. "Mom, Dad, there's something I need to tell you." The room went still. Emmanuel's fork paused midair. Xavier's voice cracked as the words tumbled out. "I'm gay." His mother gasped softly, her hand flying to her mouth. Emmanuel's face hardened instantly, the lines around his eyes deepening. "This is a phase, son. We'll fix it." No hug, no questions, just that single sentence that cut deeper than any rejection could. That was the beginning of the real battle. Emmanuel didn't yell or throw him out. Instead, he acted. He researched conversion therapy programs, made quiet calls to pastors, and even suggested a men's retreat where Xavier could find his strength. Xavier refused every time, but the pressure never let up. Family dinners became minefields. His mother tried to mediate with quiet tears, begging him to think of the future. Marcus stood by him, becoming the brother he never had. But even that friendship would face its own tests later. Xavier moved out after graduation, taking a job as a graphic designer in the city, but the distance didn't erase the ache. Every holiday call carried the unspoken question, when will you be normal again? Years passed in a blur of late nights at the studio, quiet dates that never lasted because fear always crept in, and the slow building of a life he could call his own. He met Alex at a design conference 3 years ago. Alex was everything Xavier had stopped believing he could have: steady, kind, and unafraid. Their love grew carefully, built on late-night talks and shared dreams of a future without hiding. But the shadow of Emmanuel's disapproval lingered. Xavier never brought Alex home. The wedding invitation had been sent more out of duty than hope. Now, standing at the altar, watching his father approach the microphone, Xavier wondered if he had made the biggest mistake of his life. Emmanuel tapped the mic once, the sound sharp. "Family, friends, thank you for being here today." His voice was steady, but Xavier saw the tremor in his hand. The room held its breath. This was it. The moment everything would either end or begin again. Emmanuel's words hung in the air, each one landing like stones in still water. "I've spent a lot of years trying to be the father I thought Xavier needed. Strong, traditional, unyielding." He paused, looking directly at his son for the first time since standing up. Xavier's grip on Alex's hand tightened until his knuckles turned white. Guests shifted uncomfortably. A few relatives exchanged glances, remembering the rumors that had circulated for years about the Thompson family's problem. But Emmanuel kept going. "When Xavier told us he was gay that Christmas, I didn't listen. I didn't want to hear it. I thought if I pushed hard enough, prayed hard enough, sent him to the right people, I could change him. I was wrong." The admission rippled through the ballroom like a shockwave. Xavier's mother covered her mouth, tears already forming. Marcus, seated near the front with his wife, leaned forward, eyes wide. This was not the speech anyone had expected. The journey back to this moment had been brutal. After that Christmas confession, Emmanuel had doubled down. He canceled the family trip to Florida and instead booked Xavier into a weekend counseling session with a pastor who specialized in same-sex attraction issues. Xavier went only because refusing would have meant losing his mother too. The sessions were filled with Bible verses and talks about weakness, but they only made the fire inside him burn brighter. He came home angrier, more determined. "This isn't a choice, Dad. This is who I am," he had shouted one night in the kitchen. Emmanuel had slammed his fist on the table. "Then you're choosing a hard life, son. One I won't watch you destroy." Xavier threw himself into his new city life. The graphic design firm in the Loop gave him purpose. He designed logos for startups, created campaigns that won awards, and slowly built a circle of friends who didn't ask him to be someone else. Marcus visited often, crashing on the couch and reminding him he wasn't alone. "You've got this, X. Don't let him dim your light." But the calls from home grew tense. His mother would cry softly on the phone, begging him to at least try dating a nice girl. Emmanuel rarely spoke directly, but the silence said everything. Then came the betrayal that nearly broke everything. 2 years after coming out, Xavier had started seeing someone seriously, a quiet accountant named Jordan. They kept it private, but Marcus, struggling with his own issues at the time, let something slip during a drunken night with old high school friends. The rumor reached Emmanuel within days. The confrontation was explosive. Emmanuel showed up at Xavier's apartment unannounced, eyes blazing. "I trusted you to keep this quiet. Now the whole family knows. What kind of man are you?" Xavier stood his ground, but the words cut deep. He ended things with Jordan shortly after, convinced that love would always cost him too much. The low point came during his mother's birthday dinner. Emmanuel had invited extended family, and someone made a joke about Xavier finally settling down. The laughter died when Xavier quietly said, "Actually, I'm seeing someone. His name is Alex." The room froze. A cousin muttered something under his breath. Emmanuel stood up and left the table without a word. That night, Xavier drove back to the city in tears, wondering if family was worth the pain. He threw himself into work, winning a big account that kept him busy for months. Alex was patient, never pushing, but Xavier could see the worry in his eyes. Slowly, cracks began to appear in Emmanuel's armor. A heart scare last year forced him to slow down. During recovery, Xavier visited more often. They didn't talk about the gay issue at first, sticking to safe topics like sports and business. But one afternoon in the hospital, Emmanuel looked at his son and said, "I don't understand it, Xavier. But I don't want to lose you." It wasn't acceptance, but it was the first crack. Xavier held on to that moment like a lifeline. Now, at the wedding, Emmanuel continued his speech, his voice growing stronger. "I tried to fix what wasn't broken. I pushed him away when he needed me most. Today, I stand here not as the man who thought he knew best, but as a father who finally sees his son for who he truly is." Tears glistened in Emmanuel's eyes. The entire hall was silent, hanging on every word. Xavier felt his own eyes burning. This was the turning point he had waited years for, the moment when the man who had tried to reshape him was now reshaping himself. Emmanuel turned to face the couple fully. "Alex, thank you for loving my son the way he deserves. Xavier, I'm proud of you. Not despite who you are, but because of it." The applause started slow, then swelled until it filled the room. Xavier stepped forward, pulling his father into a hug that had been decades in the making. The tears came freely now, for both of them. The hug lasted only seconds, but it felt like years of weight lifting off Xavier's shoulders. Cameras flashed around them as guests wiped their eyes. Alex joined the embrace, and for the first time in his life, Xavier felt completely whole. The rest of the reception blurred into laughter, dancing, and toasts that celebrated not just the marriage but the hard-won family healing. Yet as the night wound down, Xavier couldn't shake the memories that had led here. Back in the city after college, the isolation had been crushing. He had thrown himself into work, designing sleek brand identities for tech firms while keeping his personal life locked away. Friends from the LGBTQ group invited him to Pride events, but he always found excuses. The fear of Emmanuel finding out kept him small. Marcus tried to pull him out, organizing weekend trips and introducing him to new people, but Xavier pushed everyone away. "I can't risk it," he would say. Marcus's frustration grew. "You're letting him win, X. This isn't living." The breaking point came during a brutal Chicago winter. Xavier caught a bad flu that turned into pneumonia. Alone in his apartment, too weak to call for help, he finally broke down and texted Marcus. His friend showed up within the hour, taking him to the hospital and staying by his side for 3 days. During one feverish night, Xavier whispered the truth about how deeply Emmanuel's rejection had scarred him. Marcus listened without judgment. "You've got to fight for your happiness, man. Not for him. For you." Recovery brought clarity. Xavier started therapy, not the kind his father had pushed, but real sessions with a counselor who helped him unpack the shame. He learned to separate his worth from his father's approval. Slowly, he began dating again, small steps at first. Coffee dates that didn't lead anywhere, then longer evenings with men who understood the struggle. None stuck until Alex walked into his life at that design conference in New York. Alex was different. He worked in nonprofit marketing, had a quiet strength, and never asked Xavier to hide. Their first real date was a simple walk through Millennium Park. They talked for hours about everything, from childhood dreams to fears of growing old alone. When Alex kissed him goodnight under the cloud gate, Xavier didn't flinch. For the first time, love felt safe. But telling his parents about Alex was another battle. He chose a neutral lunch at a downtown restaurant. His mother smiled politely, but Emmanuel's jaw tightened. "This is the life you're choosing?" The question hung heavy. Xavier nodded. "It's not a choice, Dad. It's me." The lunch ended early. Weeks of silence followed. His mother called secretly, crying about how Emmanuel barely slept. Xavier felt the guilt, but he refused to go back into the closet. The real test came when Alex proposed. They were on a weekend getaway in Michigan, watching the sunset over Lake Michigan. Alex got down on one knee with a simple titanium band. Xavier said yes through tears. Planning the wedding became therapy in itself. Choosing venues, flowers, and guest lists forced him to confront every fear. Inviting his parents was the hardest part. Emmanuel's RSVP came back with a single word, attending. No note. No warmth. As preparations intensified, old wounds reopened. A distant uncle called to warn Xavier about the family reputation. Marcus, now married with a baby on the way, confessed during a bachelor party that he had once almost told Emmanuel everything during a weak moment years ago. "I was scared for you, but I was wrong to even consider it." The confession stung, but Xavier forgave him. Their friendship had survived worse. The night before the wedding, Xavier couldn't sleep. He sat on the hotel balcony overlooking the city lights, remembering every fight, every tear, every moment he had almost given up. Alex found him there and simply held him. "Whatever happens tomorrow, we face it together." Those words carried Xavier through the morning preparations, through the suit fitting, through the anxious wait at the altar. Now, with his father's arms around him and the applause still ringing, Xavier understood the depth of the journey. The misunderstandings that had nearly destroyed them, the secrets that had isolated him, the sacrifices he had made to stay true, all of it had led to this single moment of raw honesty. The celebration continued late into the night, but Xavier's mind kept drifting to the years of quiet battles that no one else had seen. After the proposal, planning the wedding had forced every buried issue to the surface. Choosing a venue in Chicago felt symbolic, close enough for family, but far enough to feel like their own space. Alex handled most of the details with calm efficiency, but Xavier struggled with the guest list. Every name represented a piece of his fractured past. His mother had been the first to fully embrace the news. She started calling Alex son during secret phone calls, sending recipes and asking about color schemes. But Emmanuel remained distant. He would answer texts about the date, but never asked questions. Xavier tried reaching out once, driving to the family home on a quiet Sunday. They sat in the backyard where he had played as a child. "Dad, I need you there." Not just physically, really there. Emmanuel had stared at the grass for a long time. "I'm trying, Xavier. It's not easy for me." It wasn't the acceptance he wanted, but it was effort. Work became an escape and a proving ground. Xavier landed a major campaign for a local nonprofit focused on LGBTQ youth. The project hit close to home, forcing him to design visuals that spoke of hope and belonging. Late nights at the studio became therapy sessions with himself. He poured his pain into the work, winning industry recognition that brought new clients and confidence. Alex supported every late night, bringing dinner to the office and reminding him that success wasn't measured by his father's approval. Friendships evolved too. Marcus and his wife became the couple's biggest cheerleaders, hosting barbecues and helping with wedding favors. But one old friend from college, someone who had known Xavier during his closeted years, reacted badly to the engagement news. "I thought you'd grow out of it," he said over drinks. The words reopened old wounds. Xavier walked away from the friendship, realizing some people could never understand. The loss hurt, but it taught him the value of choosing his circle carefully. The biggest sacrifice came 6 months before the wedding. Xavier's firm offered him a promotion that required moving to Los Angeles for 2 years. It was the career break he had dreamed of, but it meant leaving Alex, his support network, and the fragile progress with his father. He turned it down without hesitation. "My life is here now," he told his boss. Alex never asked him to sacrifice, but seeing the relief in his partner's eyes confirmed the decision was right. Growth wasn't about running away, it was about standing firm. Emmanuel's health scare had been the unexpected catalyst. After the hospital stay, father and son started weekly phone calls. They talked about baseball, the business, anything but the elephant in the room. Slowly, questions crept in. "This Alex guy, does he treat you right?" Emmanuel asked one evening. Xavier smiled through the phone. "Better than I deserve, Dad." The conversations grew longer. Emmanuel even asked for advice on a new project, treating Xavier like an equal for the first time. The week before the wedding brought the final test. A tabloid-style family blog somehow got wind of the story and reached out for comment. Emmanuel called Xavier immediately. "I told them no. This is our business, not theirs." The simple act of protection meant more than any grand gesture. Xavier felt the walls finally crumbling. Standing on the dance floor now, watching his father slow dance with his mother, Xavier realized how far they had come. The misunderstandings that had nearly torn them apart, the betrayal by friends who couldn't accept him, the sacrifices he had made to protect his truth, all of it had shaped the man he was today. Alex pulled him close for the next song, whispering, "You did it." Xavier closed his eyes, letting the music carry him. But deep down, he knew the real speech was only the beginning. Healing would take time. Conversations would still be hard. Yet for the first time, he believed they could face whatever came next together. The morning after the wedding, sunlight streamed through the hotel curtains as Xavier and Alex packed for their honeymoon. Emmanuel knocked on the door unexpectedly, holding a small envelope. "I wanted to give you this before you leave." Inside was a handwritten letter, pages long, detailing every regret, every prayer, every moment Emmanuel had questioned his own rigidity. "I was scared of losing the son I thought I knew," he wrote. "Instead, I almost lost the son I have." Xavier read it twice, tears falling freely. He hugged his father tightly in the hallway. "Thank you, Dad. This means everything." The honeymoon in Hawaii gave them space to breathe. Long walks on black sand beaches, quiet dinners watching sunsets, and honest conversations about the future. Alex shared his own struggles growing up in a conservative family in rural Illinois. "I never thought I'd have this," he admitted one night under the stars. Xavier held him closer. "Neither did I." The distance from Chicago allowed perspective. They talked about starting a family someday, maybe adopting, and how they would navigate the world as two men in love. Returning home brought new challenges. Work piled up, but Xavier approached it with renewed energy. He volunteered at the same LGBTQ youth center that had inspired his award-winning campaign, mentoring young people who reminded him of his younger self. One teenager, struggling with coming out, asked him, "Did your dad ever accept you?" Xavier smiled. "He's still learning, but yes." And that makes all the difference. Marcus and his growing family became a regular part of their lives. Barbecues in the backyard, game nights, and shared holidays created the chosen family Xavier had always needed. But not every relationship healed. An aunt who had skipped the wedding sent a cold email citing religious differences. Xavier read it once and deleted it. He had learned that some bridges were better left unbuilt. Emmanuel started showing up in small ways. He attended a company picnic with Xavier's firm, shaking hands and asking genuine questions about the work. He even joined a father-son support group for parents of LGBTQ children, though he never talked about it much. The change wasn't dramatic or perfect. There were still awkward silences and old habits. But the effort was there, and Xavier met it halfway. 6 months after the wedding, they gathered for Thanksgiving at the family home. The table was full, laughter echoed, and for the first time, Alex sat beside Xavier without tension. Emmanuel raised his glass. "To family, however it looks." The toast was simple, but the room filled with genuine warmth. Xavier looked around and realized this was the acceptance he had fought for, not perfect, but real. Life continued with its ups and downs. A work project fell through, testing their resilience. A close friend faced health issues, reminding them of what mattered. Through it all, Xavier and Alex built a home filled with love, art, and quiet strength. Emmanuel visited more often, bringing tools to help with renovations and staying for dinner. The conversations grew easier. They talked about politics, sports, even dating advice for the next generation. Xavier's growth showed in every decision. He no longer apologized for who he was. He spoke openly at industry events about representation. He supported causes that mattered. The psychological scars remained, but they had become sources of strength rather than shame. Each choice to live authentically proved he had survived the journey and emerged wiser. Years later, standing in their backyard during a summer barbecue, Xavier watched Alex chase their adopted son around the lawn. Emmanuel sat nearby, now a grandfather who told stories without hesitation. The family had grown, not just in numbers, but in understanding. Friends came and went, some staying forever, others teaching lessons in letting go. The societal pressures that once felt suffocating now seemed distant, manageable because they faced them together. Xavier had become a mentor in his community, sharing pieces of his story at support groups and workshops. Young men looked at him with hope, seeing proof that love and acceptance were possible. He never sugar-coated the pain, the misunderstandings, the betrayals, or the sacrifices. But he always ended with the same message: the truth sets you free, even when it hurts first. Looking back, Xavier understood every step had purpose. The early confusion in school, the college awakening, the painful coming out, the father's resistance, the lost friendships, the career choices, the proposal, the wedding speech, all of it wove together into a life of meaning. Emmanuel had changed too, becoming an advocate in his own quiet way, speaking at church groups about listening before judging. As the sun set on another perfect evening, Xavier pulled Alex close. "We made it." Alex smiled. "We did more than that. We built something beautiful." Their son ran over, laughing, and the three of them stood together under the same sky that had once felt so heavy. The journey wasn't over. Life would bring new challenges, new conversations, new growth. But Xavier knew he was ready. He had faced himself, fought for love, and found acceptance where he least expected it. Was true acceptance only possible after hitting rock bottom, or could it have happened sooner if fear hadn't stood in the way? True or false?